Right now in 2026, the noise in the Australian property market is as loud as I've ever heard it. After 16 years of investing personally, I've never seen a more polarizing market. We've got some experts expecting property prices in the likes of Perth and Brisbane to go up by between 12 and 15% this year. And you've got other people completely writing off the market, saying we could see declines of 3 to 5% in 2026. Now, even for me, this has been extremely polarizing, with my emotions going from extreme FOMO to a moderate amount of fear. The truth is, we are no longer in a market like 2021 where you can effectively go buy absolutely anything in the major capital cities around Australia and expect extreme returns. I believe in 2026 that the buy and hold and expect short-term growth strategy is dead. I don't think it's a year where investors should be running out there and buying 4, 5 or 6 properties. That's why I'm personally this year only looking to buy 1, maybe 2 properties, and making sure I go back and use absolute fundamentals and the data to drive all key decisions in 2026. That's why in this video, I'm going to break down the exact framework I'm using to guide my decisions in 2026 to pick the right market, the right suburbs and the right properties, as well as manage my risk and cash flow and build a portfolio that can handle a great market or an extremely negative market in the next 5 years. Now, the important thing to acknowledge as we start 2026 is that interest rates are being forecast and expected to either sit flat or potentially come down from all of the major banks in Australia for most of the last year. But unfortunately, inflation is back and there's a very real risk of interest rates going up short term. Now, that's going to result in a whole bunch of down the line effects. One has got to do with sentiment and how people feel about property. It's going to have an effect on demand in Australia. It's going to have an effect on borrowing capacity. And for investors and homeowners like yourself and myself, it's going to have a direct and immediate effect on the cash flow in our property portfolios on a day-to-day and a week-to-week basis. The other reality in the Australian property market in 2026 is the fact that we now have a 2-speed market. Now, I've been explaining this and talking about this for years, but there are markets in Australia that have absolutely cranked over the last 10 years and the last 5 years, and there are markets that are significantly below their longer term averages. Now, whereas in the market between 2020 and 2025, you pretty much could have bought any house in the likes of Adelaide, Darwin, Perth, Brisbane, and a heap of the other markets across the country. Now that all of those markets have doubled in value, we've got to be extremely selective and follow fundamentals for our investments this year forward. Now, what this means is going back to absolute fundamentals and basics, like buying Australia's largest capital cities or major regional markets. On top of this, we really want to be focused on houses versus units in 2026 and beyond. Now, this is off the back of Cotality's 30 years of research ending in 2022, where they found that houses outperformed units across the country by over 125%. Now, as always, we want to be close to the city or close to the beach if you can afford to do so, on those nice big 400 to 1,000 square metre blocks of land with high quality, tenant ready, low maintenance 3 or 4 bedroom houses. Now, obviously this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to investment strategy, but on top of this, we want nice big places with nice big backyards in quality quiet streets without any housing commission and without any flooding. Now, the other reality we have in the 2026 property market is the fact that we're at the very tail end of Phil Anderson's 18.6-year real estate cycle. What that means is so much of the juice and the short-term returns in Australian residential property has already been squeezed out of the market over the last 18 years. Now, what that means for you and myself as an investor this year is that we can't blindly go into any market and expect it to kick ass. Now, a real world example of this, of taking a more data orientated investment approach to property versus just going into the market that has cranked in the last few years, is a comparison between Perth and Melbourne right now. So if we look at the last 12 months, Perth has done about 10.85% according to HTAG, where Melbourne has done about 3.8%. Now, that's okay. Obviously, in the last 12 months, we all would have preferred to be in the Perth market with that 10% growth. But when we look at the last 7 years, Perth has done about 99.73%, where Melbourne over the same period of time has done only 25.64%. Now, what that actually says to me as an investor and as someone who's looking to make the most strategic decision possible in 2026 is that Perth has absolutely smashed the short-term performance of Melbourne. In fact, Perth has gone up over 75% more than Melbourne has in the last 7 years alone. Now, that would be interesting and relevant if we didn't have a longer term perspective, but between 1992 and 2022, so that 30-year period according to Cotality, Perth prices went up just 324% versus Melbourne's 519% growth. So longer term, Melbourne has been the far superior market, but short term, Perth has smashed its performance. And that is why, for example, when I'm looking at one market versus the other, if I am looking to make a safe and secure investment this year, I'll be looking at the market that has underperformed recently, but overperformed longer term. Now, if you, like me, are considering buying 1 or 2 properties this year, then I'd say it's extremely important more than ever to manage your cash flow and to make sure you're not exposing yourself or your family to undue risk. Now, what that could mean in real terms is stress testing your cash flow against small or large interest rate rises of between 0.5% and 2% in the coming years. It also means putting in cash buffers so that you've got 6 or even up to 12 months worth of buffer in place, so that if you do lose your job or interest rates do go up or you can't find a tenant for any reason, then you're in a safe position to hold those properties through a hard time. It's more important than ever at this stage of the 18.6-year cycle to protect yourself and your family from the downside risk of the market turning sentiment-wise in the next couple of years. On top of this, another incredible buffer that I'll be personally looking at with my investment strategy in the next 12 months to not just protect myself, but to absolutely thrive in 2026 is to incorporate value add strategies into the properties that I buy. Now, an example of this could be something as simple as just a small cosmetic renovation. Other strategies that can massively help in years like this one is buying properties with either granny flat or duplex potential, so that you can either increase your cash flow or increase the future valuation of your property as well. On top of this, working with your accountants or financial advisors and making sure that you've got tax depreciation schedules on your properties so that you can get as many tax benefits off the Australian government as possible. And then other simple things like looking at your existing portfolio and making sure that your rents are at current market values, that all of your costs like rates, water, insurances, management and maintenance are set at current market levels. And I think many of us can be getting much better interest rates, much better management rates, as well as much better cash flow on our properties in 2026 forward. Now, the reason I'm personally only going for 1 or 2 investment properties this year is simple. It means that I can really pick the eyes out of the Australian property market and do extreme levels of due diligence to find that needle in the haystack property, while some other people aren't in the market at the moment. It also enables me to continue to work towards my goals of financial freedom and have exposure to the best markets and the most undervalued markets in the country without being over leveraged if something turns in the future. And ultimately, it enables me and my family to get closer to a life filled with choices and a life filled with financial freedom. Now, I actually wanted to finish off the video by letting you guys know that I actually just did buy my first investment property for 2026. It's a 4,000 square meter piece of land with a beautiful 4-bedroom house on it, walking distance to the beach in one of Geelong's most undervalued suburbs. Now, the reason I'm targeting that Victorian market for my own portfolio this year is because it is significantly undervalued. In fact, when I went and looked at Australia's 20 largest capital city and major regional markets, the 3 most undervalued markets that I could find in the country are all in Victoria right now. Now, I know that so many people are going to be out there this year rushing into Perth, Brisbane, Darwin and Adelaide again. And that is where I believe your advantage as an investor is. To not just look at Australia as one market, but to look at it literally as hundreds of different sub-markets, each with different pros and cons and different short-term and long-term history, which is why the approach that I'll be personally taking with my investments in 2026 is an extremely granular, data-driven, focused approach to make sure I absolutely squeeze everything I possibly can out of this market, as well as set myself and my family up for the next 7 to 10 years to come. Now, if you, like me, are thinking about buying an investment property that can set yourself and your family up longer term, then I'd love to offer you a one-on-one strategy session. Simply jump over to www.pumpedonproperty.com, click that free strategy session button, and we can talk about exactly where you are today, where you'd like to be longer term. We can talk about the pros and cons of investing in the 2026 market and all of those hidden gems out there that not everybody is looking at. And then you can take that information and go and absolutely smash it on your own, or potentially become one of the extremely small number of clients that I personally work with each week. But either way, we wish you all the best in 2026 and good luck on your journey.